You're listening to the Personal Mastery Podcast with Ari Baga, interviewing CEOs and executives who are performing at the highest level in their industry, working purposefully towards a vision in alignment with their values, and in a state of constant learning about the self. Welcome to episode number 2. And in this episode, we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Stephen Yalof, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Tanger Outlets. Stephen has over 30 years of experience in the real estate and retail space, and he has helped brands like Gap and Ralph Lauren develop their real estate and retail strategies. In this episode, we're going to dive into the retail space pre and post COVID-19 and how his company has been able to pivot and implement new strategies to drive customers back in their retail stores. So if you have ever been interested in retail or you're just wondering about retail in general, this is a great episode for you. So without further ado, here's Stephen. Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ari.
Yeah, you went to George Washington University. Did you grow up in Washington?
No.
No.
I'm a New York City. I'm a local.
Local?
New York City local. I grew up just outside of the city in a town called Livingston, New Jersey.
Okay.
And I've pretty much been here ever since.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't think I've met anyone from Washington, actually. I think people just end up.
It's a big move.
Yeah, people just end up in Washington. And right, like you've been known as a retail guru. You worked at Gap, Ralph Lauren. Can you kind of talk about how you went from college all the way to getting in these positions?
Wow. Absolutely. When I was in college, I think it was my junior year of college, I was at George Washington University, and I had taken for the first 2 years of college, I had taken all of the prerequisite courses for a well-rounded liberal arts curriculum. Mm-hmm. And in my junior year, I went into the George Washington University School of Business, and I took my first course in finance with a professor named Bill Handorf. And I remember the first day of school, he said part of the recommended course materials was a Hewlett-Packard HP 12C calculator.
You still have it?
Still have it. And with that calculator, day one, we started to talk about how to calculate mortgages and how to calculate bond payments and return on investment and net present value. And I was like, all of a sudden, I had a professor that was speaking my language. And from there, I took a class in real estate. And in that business curriculum, I always gravitated back to that first class that I took with Professor Handorf and decided that I wanted to be in the real estate business. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated from college, I went into the real estate business. And I was fortunate to get a position with a company called James Felt, that the original owner of the Felt Forum, which you probably know was the original, they call it the Theater in Madison Square Garden right now. It was called the Felt Forum. Mm-hmm. And I worked for two guys, a gentleman named Abe Barkin and the other one named Henry Hart Rice. Henry Hart Rice, at the time, he was the guru of the New York City real estate business. And in fact, today, the Real Estate Board of New York gives out an award every year, the most prestigious of which is the Henry Hart Rice Most Ingenious Deal of the Year. So for those who get awarded that distinction and that honor, I always feel it's my responsibility to reach out to those individuals and let them know that having worked for Henry Hart Rice at the beginning of my career, that is in fact an amazing honor. Mm-hmm. So I worked for that firm and got into the real estate development business. And as a real estate developer, we were building shopping centers. And specifically at that time, we were building factory outlet shopping centers. So I started out leasing factory outlet shopping centers and spent 10 years going from the assistant to the leasing person to the actual leasing person to the vice president of leasing. And it was a great journey. Deal making, one of the things about that position that I think I gravitated to the most, it was a very outwardly facing position. So this was back in the days, I'm going back about 30 years. There were no cell phones. There was no email. Business was done on the phone and you took notes by hand. And I think the skills that you develop, whether you were on the phone negotiating with somebody or you had the opportunity to get in front of them, I think you really learned a lot about deal making. I always felt face to face was the best way to get in front of somebody and make a deal. Partially because, the art of negotiation, I think there's a lot of face to face. There's a lot that you can learn face to face that you can't learn on a phone call, an email, or a text message.
Yeah.
So just to expedite my journey real quick, 10 years working for New Plan Realty Trust in leasing. I went to the Gap. I was at the Gap. Fortunately, I was there when Mickey Drexler was there. You talk about being a guru in real estate. Mickey Drexler was the guru of retail. So I was extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to work for Mickey. I spent about 5 years at the Gap when I went to Ralph Lauren. And again, you want to talk about iconic folks in the retail and design business. Not only did I have an opportunity to work directly with Mr. Lauren, where I learned a tremendous amount about that business, but the chief operating officer was a gentleman named Roger Farah. And Roger Farah, who, right now he's the chairman of Tiffany. And I had the opportunity to work with him for 15 years and just learned a tremendous amount about the business. The entire journey, whether it was New Plan, Gap, or Ralph Lauren, I was always on the transactional side of the real estate business. So my role in each one of those jobs was to either secure Gap deals when I was working for the developer or do deals with the developer when I was working at the Gap. So I've always had a role in transactional real estate. 15 years through my Polo experience, I was offered the position as the head of the premium outlet platform, which is under Simon, working for David Simon. I spent 6 years at that company. It was a phenomenal experience for us. It was a fantastic global portfolio. And recently in April, when Mr. Tanger decided that he was going to step down as CEO and step into the role of executive chair at his, family namesake company, he asked if I would step in as that CEO of that company. So quick journey, but if you could see, every one of the jobs that I held was really a stepping stone to the next one. And not sure what's next, but I'm pretty satisfied that I am where I am today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like, you have quite a real estate and retail history, and there's just so much experience, and I'm super excited to dive into it. So yeah, you recently took on the role as the CEO of Tanger Outlets in the midst of a crisis. You must really love retail if you're decide to step in that position right now. So can you talk about what motivated you to step into that position?
Sure. Well, first of all, the outlet business is the business that I know. Like I mentioned, I've been in the outlet business for over 30 years. I've grown up in the business. I've seen retailers come and go. I've seen shopping centers get developed and other shopping centers get out-positioned and lose their market share. And as I've evolved and seen transactions from both the retailer side and the landlord side, it's always been exciting to me to see how technology has changed the business. Yet at the end of the day, the business is still the same. It's focused on three core principles. It is the operations, the leasing, and the marketing of shopping centers. And although you can include new technologies in order to execute to all three of those big buckets, where the rubber meets the road is in execution. And those are the three core pillars upon which this business stands.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really, my journey was through all execution on all three of those front lines. This particular position allows me to tie all three of those together.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to retail, like especially me being in the e-commerce direct to consumer space, a lot of people look at retail as like a dying space. So I want to talk about like what do you think is going to take to save retail, or even is it possible to save retail, or you don't even think like retail is going through any sort of like issues right now?
Well, look, I think that, obviously e-commerce, the growth of e-commerce has been phenomenal over the past 10 and 15 years. And, the advancement of the technology, making e-commerce even more available to everybody has, grown at a mind-dizzying speed. I think COVID even propelled it further and faster. The stay-at-home mandates forced everybody who wasn't used to shopping online,
Yep.
taught them very quickly how to become online consumers. But I think what's always been available, if it's been properly embraced, is sort of the omni-channel experience of online drives a customer to a brick and mortar space, and brick and mortar could drive a customer to an online space. And I think that retailers have found it important, if not imperative to their business, to create that seamless experience between bricks and mortar and their online experience. A statistic that I had heard was that 90% of all shopping journeys that end in brick and mortar start online. And if you subscribe to that, what that's saying is that customers are doing their window shopping online, but still doing their execution in a bricks and mortar environment. And I think a lot of that is supported by, the pace at which digitally native retailers are now opening up bricks and mortar stores. And whether it's, a Warby Parker who ideally has a showroom, a bricks and mortar showroom where you can actually transact and leave with product, or a Bonobos, which you simply walk into the store, engage with the product, try it on, feel it, and everything gets shipped directly to you. So it's different brands have spun it differently. The innovations are different. But, if you think about the history of online, you can go back over 50 years to the Sears Roebuck catalog, which, if you think about it, that was the first online commerce. You essentially were getting a catalog sent to your house. More modern versions, Williams-Sonoma had a great catalog business. Victoria's Secret, a great catalog business. J. Crew, a wonderful catalog business. And, the catalog business was the precursor to online. So there's always been that mix of online, call it catalog, and bricks and mortar over the evolution of retail.
Mm-hmm. And now going back to even like pre-COVID-19, there were still like a lot of store closures. And I do see that direct-to-consumer brands are they're also opening stores because it's very profitable for direct-to-consumer brands to open those retail stores, because the cost to acquire a customer through Facebook Google has really gone up over the past like 4 or 5 years.
Yep.
So what role does like retail really play for like a direct consumer brand? Is it for customers to come in and just like feel the product, or how can you kind of see like both e-commerce and retail working very well together?
Yeah, that's interesting. Somebody said to me the other day, you can't taste a cup of coffee online. And I think that that's sort of a metaphor for all the businesses where, you as a consumer want to interact with a product. I mean, you can buy a Tesla online, but my guess is before you spend that kind of money on an automobile, you're going to want to drive it first,
Mhm.
or at least sit in the car and feel what it's all about. Similarly with apparel, jewelry, everything, all products are available for purchase online, but I think a discerning customer really wants to try before they buy. And I'm a big fan of that. I mean, you know, I've bought products online and was disappointed with the actual purchase because it wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. But typically, if I go into a store and I have a chance to, go into a fitting room and try something on, I'm typically more satisfied with the purchase at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, there's commodity products, so great brands like the Gap, and I'll use the Gap because I worked there. And I know that I'm a size large blue T-shirt. That's my go-to. That's easy to buy a commodity product like that online for me because it's the same thing every time I buy it.
Mhm.
But if they're going to do a new promotion and a new cut of jean, personally, I like to try those on before I would buy them online, and that's just part of the shopping experience. To me, I also like customer service. You know, I may be a little bit more old school, but if I have the option to chat with somebody about something, or live speak to somebody about something, or text back and forth, I usually take the 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 speak live option because I like the instant gratification that comes with the answer. I like the dialogue, and I find that to be a better form of interaction for me.
Mhm.
Um, I'm sure there's a lot of people that feel that same way.
Right. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing about retail, right? If you want a product, you can go to the store, feel the product, touch it, and especially for clothing, like I've done online shopping, and most of the time you get the shirt and it doesn't fit the way you thought it would fit, and going to the store and actually trying it on is usually like the best way, and you end up much more satisfied. So with that being said, it sounds like retail still has like its place in the customer journey. But recently, I did read an article from Market Watch saying that over 100,000 stores are planning to close by 2025. So, what is that like? How do you kind of see retail? Where do you kind of see it going over the next like 5 years or so if that many stores are closing? Like, what is retail becoming?
Well, look, and I think there's always going to be natural attrition of stores. If you take a look at the outlet centers I was leasing 30 years ago, I think you would recognize 5 tenants that are in the outlet centers today. If you look back, even some of the most popular tenants in the outlet centers today, brands like Lululemon, Tory Burch, Under Armour, didn't exist 10 years ago. So there'll always be new retail stores opening, and there'll always be older brands that are closing. And I see that happening. Now, if I, also just to talk about retail in general, there's over 1 billion square feet of retail in the United States of full price mall retail. But yet there's only 70 million square feet of outlet retail. So, I think that outlet as a channel is still under retailed relative to the exposure of full price retail out there. And I still think there's opportunity for the channel and some expansion of the channel, both domestically and globally.
Mm. Yeah, and I think like recently with the changes that are coming, we even have like online store platforms like Shopify that are also investing in retail, where consumers would shop online and go pick up in store, or they can even use like the same system that like Shopify that they use online for retail, where customers can like scan the code and check out in stores. So things like that are starting to like roll out. That are really interesting. And that's one of the questions that I want to ask, which is, I think the reason why a lot of brands are scared of getting into retail is because of tracking, like not being able to know, okay, if I spend some advertising money, what was the return on it? Because I can't track someone like seeing an ad and walking into a retail store. So is there like any new technology that you've kind of seen that is helping with tracking, or is that something that is still like being discovered?
Well, obviously, there's some brands that do it great, and there's other brands that are probably a little bit slower. And I think you talked earlier about customer acquisition, and making that investment in order to acquire a customer. And maybe I can answer your question this way. You talk about opening stores in bricks and mortar, and let's talk about opening stores in outlets just as an example. If you've got a new retailer to the outlet business, and let's take a luxury retailer, because there's been a move for a lot of the luxury retailers to open up outlet stores. And I think those luxury retailers are looking at it for a number of different reasons. I mean, our particular platform, we get over 180 million people a year come through our platform. That's 40 shopping centers, 15 million square feet. So we see a lot of traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Luxury retailers that want to be in the outlet space are recognizing a couple of things. And that's that particular customer that shops luxury probably shops high street retail or high-end department store retail, yet that outlet customer who may not be shopping in those particular channels is still shopping aspirationally in an outlet. So there's a customer who looks at a luxury brand, and says, I might not engage with that brand on Madison Avenue or Worth Avenue, but sees that brand presented in an outlet format and says, that brand may be accessible to me. There may be an accessible price point because I'm in an environment that's a discount-oriented environment, yet this great brand is here. Maybe I'll walk in the store and I'll engage with that brand and I'll buy something and I'll buy in. And I see that happening a lot in our channel. So you talk about the cost of customer acquisition. I think opening a bricks and mortar store, or particularly one in an outlet center, gives that brand access to that foot traffic, that customer base. And I think it's a relatively low cost of customer acquisition, because then they can convert that customer at outlet and maybe ultimately own them for their entire shopping journey as they travel through full price sales as well.
Mm-hmm. And with like this recent pandemic, do you kind of see like the same level, or do you think we're going to see the same level of foot traffic post COVID-19, or do you think people are going to be a little more conservative when it comes to going to retail store and touching products, feeling products, because of everything that's happened?
I think it'll be a mixed bag. So when the stay-at-home mandates came down, now we're mostly non-essential retail, so most of our stores closed. Now we still have essential retail that stayed open in a lot of our shopping centers. So our shopping centers, theoretically, we never closed. Mm-hmm. But here's the point. When the stay-at-home mandates were lifted, and they were lifted faster in the South than they were here in the Northeast. But for example, South Carolina, the stay-at-home mandates were less than a month. And as those stores started to as the mandates lifted, the store started to reopen, and the speed at which the stores reopened in our channel,
Mm-hmm.
and the speed at which the customer traffic came back in our channel really spoke to the importance of that particular channel for people that like to shop. Now, we were talking about everybody who was shopping online, but now all of our shopping centers are open. Every square foot is open. 98% of our retailers have reopened. Our traffic as of last week is back up to about 90% of last year's levels.
Wow.
And those are pretty impressive statistics. But prior to the center reopening, we implemented a number of things in order to engage a customer, which you said, to your point, may not have been ready to come back to the shopping center yet, and may not be ready to shop and touch product. So we instituted curbside pickup, and that was something that was pretty popular. A lot of folks were doing that. We're primarily open air shopping centers. We're almost exclusively open air shopping centers. So it was very easy for us to facilitate curbside pickup because the customer could virtually drive in front of the store and pick that product up.
Mm-hmm.
But we took it one step further, and we started a program called the Virtual Shopper. And essentially through the Virtual Shopper, we were able to use our customer service representatives that were on hand at all of our shopping centers, that if a customer wanted to interact with Tanger Web, they can go on the website, they can engage our website, they can book themselves an appointment for a virtual shopper. They could say what product they were looking for, what store they wanted to shop, and through the technology of the cell phone, the virtual shopper would then engage the customer on the phone and literally walk a store and virtually shop it for them. Now, that virtual shopper program was really designed initially as how do we, our customers in Riverhead, New York, before the mandates were lifted and they were able to go back and shop in Riverhead, but our shopping centers in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina were open. How did I make the product available to my Riverhead loyal customer? I did so by virtually shopping the Myrtle Beach stores. But to advance it a little bit, what we're finding is now that everything's open, Riverhead is 750,000 square feet and has a bunch of brands you can't find in some of our other stores in South Carolina. Like, I'll use Psycho Bunny as an example. It's a great street brand, has an amazing following, yet there's a customer in Myrtle Beach that wants Psycho Bunny. Through the virtual shopper, I can make all 3,500 retailers across my portfolio available to every one of my customers, regardless of geography. Even if you're in California, and I don't have a shopping center in California, but Tanger Outlets and want to shop Tanger Outlets, you can do so via the virtual shop.
Yeah, it's really amazing, like the speed of pivoting that happened like over the past few months. We've had like so many retailers launch direct-to-consumer sites, and many of them implemented a lot of different things to allow their customers to shop. And even for me being in the e-commerce space, like I think retail is still like a very important part, right? Because people love to shop in general. And that's why there's like so many stores like everywhere, whether in cities or suburbs, because people like to go shopping. And I don't think that's something that's going to go.
Well, Ari, if I can interrupt you for 1 second, you hit on a great point, because if you think about, even now, from an entertainment point of view, we talked about folks, I guess, your age that were a little bit less interested in shopping and perhaps a little bit more interested in experiences, right? And that was a big buzz over the past couple of years. Like, how do we convert this experiential seeking individual to actually convert in a mall or in a shopping center? And what's been interesting about that is, as those experiences that generation has been seeking, whether it's sporting events, restaurants, travel, theater, as those are still less accessible, what we found is shopping has become sort of the go-to experiential event for people to do as a family or to do with friends. And so I think the bricks and mortar street shopping, outlet shopping, mall shopping has been the beneficiary of a lot of that, of people's desire to get out and do something experiential.
Mhm. And I think like that's something that's really important to recognize is that like although people right now might say like okay like I'm never gonna shop in store again, but like when things opened up, people did go out and shop in store, and that is because like even working today, like we're working remotely, we're all like super isolated, and I even talked to like the one of the founders of Equinox, and she was like people are saying they're never gonna go to the gym again, but what did people do when the gym opened up? Like everybody started to go to the gym. So I think it's kind of the same thing here where people want that in-person experience. And shopping has become one of those things that, you know, you want to do with friends. And going more into this, like I've recently seen shopping malls start to implement like different experiences, like whether that's like gaming or things for fun for people to do. How have you kind of seen that help like these retail more stores drive more traffic? And is it to like get people to stick around in malls much longer? Or is that part of like the whole experience of just making it a fun place for people to come with their families?
You know, we used to get off the hook pretty easily in outlet centers because we talked about, the thrill and the greatest amenity at an outlet shopping center is the value. And that you went to an outlet shopping center for the sport of shopping, whether it was the treasure hunt of going into a brand like a Tory Burch or Ralph Lauren or a Nike and finding something that you couldn't find anywhere else, that perhaps was something that you know was out of season, yet through some excess distribution, they were able to offer this product in an outlet store. Or perhaps it was product that was returned to a retail store, and since it was in a different season, a rack of cashmere sweaters shows up in a Ralph Lauren outlet store. I mean, to a lot of our loyal customers, that's the thrill of outlet shopping, is the
Hmm.
hunt and what you can find when you're there. But to your point, we're finding that the customer, in addition to the shopping experience and the hunt, they're really looking for a number of amenities when they're on site as well. And they're really looking for an enhanced and elevated experience level. So for us, a number of the things that we do, well, first of all, we've got a VIP shopper club, and we've got a loyalty and rewards program that allows you to sort of gamify the shopping experience. If you can achieve a certain level and get a certain reward. And I think that customers get very excited about a lot of the giveaways at Tanger, and it's something our customer service and customer experience is one of the core tenets of our business. But over the years, we've elevated our food offering, which traditionally food in shopping centers has not been at the level that you would find, say, in other 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 venues. But in the outlets, we've been able to add, in some instances, some sit down, quick service, casual dining. Look, we know our customer doesn't have a tremendous amount of time. They're not coming to the outlet center for a gourmet experience. But we do want to make sure that we're meeting the customer where they are and providing them with food options that are appealing, are an attractive and clean environment, and we're bringing them the food brands that they want as well as the fashion brands that they want.
Yeah, I know personally for me, every time I went to the mall, I've always stopped by the food court, hang out with with friends, and grab some food. And yeah, it was just like a really fun thing to do. In general, whether you bought something or didn't, you still purchased something at the food court.
Well, here I'll give you a little teaser. We're working right now on a new food court innovation. I'm not going to take you through it, but if you
Yeah.
have me back in the next 6 months, well, we can spend some time talking about it. But it's something. It's pretty special. It's pretty out of the box. So we're excited to bring that to the Tanger Outlets.
Yeah, that's awesome. And now for brands that are looking to get in like retail right now, obviously everyone in the e-commerce space kind of, well, most people that I've talked to kind of feel like we're trying to avoid retail right now. Like, how do you recommend these direct to consumer brands who are thinking about retail pre COVID-19 to strategize when it comes to them going into retail post COVID-19?
Well, look, now I'll put on my retailer hat for a second because, spent 20 years on the retailer side finding locations for brands like Gap and Ralph Lauren and all of the Banana Republic, Old Navy, Club Monaco. So I've had a lot of experience building real estate growth strategies for a lot of different brands. And, I think the most important thing for a brand to think about before they enter into any bricks and mortar opportunity is understanding who their core customer is and who is the customer in addition to their core customer that they're looking to attract. Because if they're trying, like we talked about customer acquisition, if they're looking to acquire a new customer, then they need to understand who they're going after. And once they understand that, putting the parts together to decide what are the characteristics of that particular customer, where can I meet them, where they shop, it makes the decision making a little bit simpler.
Mm-hmm.
For us, our core shopper is a woman between the ages of 35 and 45 years old. And we know that what their disposable incomes are fairly high. They're looking for brand. They're looking for designer. They're looking for fashion. But they're looking to shop in a lifestyle environment. When I say lifestyle environment, when you walk into a Ralph Lauren store, you could buy inexpensive Ralph Lauren at TJ Maxx, but that's a category, that's category merchandising. So you're going to you might walk into a shirt department or a men's suit department or a hosiery department and find the actual product that you're looking for. If you walk into a Ralph Lauren store in an outlet center, it's category merchandising. So you get to speak, it's lifestyle merchandising. So you get to speak to your customer and sell them the entire lifestyle. You can sell them socks, you can sell them overcoats, you can sell them candles, you can sell them bedding, all in one environment. I think that a lot of consumers today like to shop brand, and our channel allows you to shop brand on sale every day in one of our shopping centers. And if that's what you're looking to present to your customer, is your entire lifestyle brand in one environment, curated at in an introductory price point level that allows you to acquire this particular customer, we've got a great venue for you.
Mm-hmm. Now, being an executive at these times, and you've been around for a while, you've been through the 2008 crisis as well, and
Yes,
now,
I have.
yeah, this crisis. What's like some of the biggest lessons that you've learned across these like hard times?
There's light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes the tunnel is a little bit longer, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And, we have to conduct our business. We have to be responsible. The key mantra would be keep your powder dry, preserve your liquidity. Make sure if you're going to go out and invest in a market like this, do your homework, do your research, make smart moves, make smart investments. But if you believe that the money that you spend today at a discounted price, if you believe that there's light at the end of the tunnel, then it will reward you in spades. And every one of those cycles that you've mentioned, we've come through the other end stronger, in better financial position, and with rents going up, retails going up, sales per square foot going up. So I feel pretty good that once we come through this particular cycle, our business will rebound. And I'm basing it on, I mentioned earlier how quickly our business came back once the stay-at-home mandates were lifted. But I think once there's a vaccine or there's available therapeutics, and we can look at COVID-19 in the rearview mirror, it may take a bit of time before it's business as usual. And maybe business as we knew it will change. But for the smarter companies who are wise about how they invest their capital, there's going to be plenty of business to be had in the future. People are still going to wear clothes. People are still going to shop, want to dine out. People are still going to want to be entertained. And we're going to be there to provide all of those things to those customers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really hope we get out of this Zoom Zoom trap that we've all been on for the past few months. And my next question for you is, obviously you're a CEO, you're super busy, and you make a lot of decisions. Are there any habits that you have that keep you sane, especially in these times?
Yes. Make sure that before you leave your office at the end of the night, you've read all your emails. You'll always get the overnight emails, but you want to be current. It's, just at this stage, missing an email is almost unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, we find ourselves CC'd on a lot of things, and people get into conversations with one another that really don't necessarily involve us. I would hope that people are respectful of others' times and know when to not reply all. But I'm pretty fluid with email, and I think it's really important for my own personal sort of business sanity that I get through the day's emails at the end of every day. I also, as I go through my emails, I go through my to-do list. Every morning, the first thing I do is I write down my to-do list. Or I actually do it every Monday morning, and I work off of it for the week. But I go through and I check it, and I circle priorities, and I highlight the things that I need to follow up on. I make it a habit of writing things down. I never want to be the individual that forgot to do something because I was too busy to get it done. I also think it's important to return everybody's phone call, because I'm in the sales business, and I understand that the math is for every 100 calls I make, maybe I'll get 10 calls back, but treat every phone call like it's like there's money on the other end of the phone, and it's the most important call that you're going to get that day. And I think that it's a great way of paying it forward. Mickey Drexler, every phone call he gets, he returns. He returns his emails. And you think I'm busy? I would imagine that guy's 10 times busier. Yet he finds the time to do the things that are important, and communication, I think, is absolutely critical. So to me, those are some of the really important things that I like to do. I don't want anybody to say, I never heard back from that individual, or I'm obviously not important. And regardless of who you have on the other line, it's very easy to just say, thank you very much. This is not for me. I'll send it to somebody else. Typically, if I get a soliciting email, what I'll respond to that soliciting email and say, I am putting on blind copy the person in my firm responsible for that decision, and giving them the opportunity, if they want to engage, to follow up with you directly. That way, at least I close the loop on that the individual has contacted me. I've given it to somebody else and given that person the opportunity, if it's something that we should be interested in, to follow up on that directly.
Yeah, this is really cool. Like like I need to definitely get better on that, because like I always felt like when someone emails me and it has nothing to do with me, like I would typically not respond. But I think it's just like great to respond to that person and at least have like that great first impression, because like that person might end up in a different position at another time, and you might need to like need their help at any point. So I'm definitely going to start doing that. Thanks for sharing that.
Sure.
Well, Stephen, thanks for being on the show. How can people get a hold of you?
Well, that would mean I'd have to give out my email address. I'll get 10,000 more emails a day. No! So it's Stephen.Yalof at TangerOutlets.com. And again, feel free to email me. I've set myself up, so I will respond to you. You're going to test me. You're going to email me now under like 4 or 5 different aliases to see if I'm for real. Yeah. But, you know, look, if you're a digitally native business that's looking to get into the outlet business or retail in general, I'd love to talk to you about it. You know, these are great forums to get in front of people that are considering doing a deal, whether it's a full-term deal or a pop-up deal. I've got an opinion on both of those. I'm happy to share. I'm happy to discuss real estate strategy and, you know, how I grew several companies during the course of my career. But, you know, that's just me sharing, you know, point of view. I'm just as interested, if not more so, in learning about you, learning about your business, learning about how I can help your business. And, you know, to me, there's so much out there that I haven't seen yet that I'm so anxious to learn about, to absorb, and hopefully figure out a way to incorporate into what, you know, we always talk about, the mall of the future. Mm-hmm. So if you can help me do that, I'm here, I'm listening.
Yeah, we'll definitely leave your contact information in the description of the podcast, so our listeners can check that out. Now, I have one final question for Stephen here. So if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please head over to YouTube, because that's where this last question is going to be answered. Now, welcome to the extras portion of the podcast. And the final question that I have for Stephen here is, are there any brands that you love or envy, and why?
You know, I hate to sound self-serving, but I always loved the Gap. Mm-hmm. And when I was young, I loved from the fall into the Gap days to the khaki swing days. And the fact that I was able to work for the Gap, I mean, that was such an amazingly fulfilling experience for me. So there's a brand that I love. I watch it. They've become one of my biggest customers now in the outlet space. They're pivoting. They're developing new brands. I love Athleta. I've always been a big fan of Intermix. So I have to say, Gap brand, you know, I think it's got a lot of tremendous growth ahead of it, and that's a brand that I've always admired. Mm-hmm. But I also have to say that Ralph Lauren is just, it's to me, it's quintessential. You know, we used to say it's the one brand that can dress everybody from cradle to grave, and speaks of a lifestyle that, you know, when I worked at the Gap, when I worked at Ralph Lauren, you know, you could wear anything to work you wanted as long as it was Ralph Lauren. Well, there was a double RL group that was the most dapper group of people you ever saw, wearing jeans and tweed jackets and bow ties. And then there was the motorcycle group. And then there was the Ralph Lauren Purple Label men's suiting group. And it was just so unbelievable to me that it could go from equestrian to English racing cars to the sport of polo to the most glamorous evening attire that you could think. to casual on the beach.
Mhm.
And they've been doing it for 50 years, and they continue to deliver it every day. And so that's a brand that I am personally in complete awe of.
That's awesome. Well, Stephen, thanks again for being on this episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast, and we look forward to having you again in the future.
Thank you. Thanks, Ari. It's been great. And I look forward to hearing from some of the folks that are listening. And hopefully there's some new Tanger outlet retailers in my future.
Thanks again for listening to this episode, and I hope you learn a lot about how Stephen is navigating the retail waters during this pandemic. If you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, please follow this podcast and leave us a 5-star review. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like, comment, and subscribe to this channel for more episodes like this. Other than that, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Personal Mastery Podcast.